You're listening to Quantum Harry the Podcast, a podcast version of the book Quantum Harry, A Unified Theory of the Potterverse by B.L. Purdom. Episode 14, The Devil's Game. This is the third and final episode examining the role of games, toys, and fairy tales in Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. So if you missed episodes 12 and 13, or just episode 13, I suggest going back to catch up. Last time I explained how this book is J.K. Rowling's version of the classic fairy tale Little Red Riding Hood, as well as how the second threshold Harry crosses with Hagrid in the first book aligns with Chamber of Secrets. This time I'll look at how the second obstacle to the Philosopher's Stone aligns with this book, and how games propel the plot forward and tell us revealing things about the people playing those games, as well as looking at a few ways that Rowling occasionally has someone other than Ginny playing the role of Red Riding Hood in the second book of the series. The obstacle to the Philosopher's Stone aligning with the first book was Fluffy, who, like the three-headed dog Cerberus in Greek mythology, is guardian of an underworld, forcing anyone seeking the Philosopher's Stone to metaphorically die in order to reach it. The next obstacle aligns with the second book, The Devil's Snare. The snakiness of the Devil's Snare is seen in Chamber of Secrets in multiple incarnations. First we have the branches of the Whomping Willow, which is another guardian of an underworld, the tunnel leading to the Shrieking Shack. The tree attacks Harry and Ron after they arrive at school in the Flying Ford Anglia. There's also the snake at the Dueling Club, and of course there's the Basilisk. There are metaphorical snakes as well, Draco Malfoy, Snape, and Tom Riddle. Devil's Snare is defeated in the same way that Harry defeats the Basilisk, through an act of faith, in this case going limp rather than continuing to struggle, or with sunlight, real or magical. The Phoenix is associated with the Temple of the Sun at Heliopolis in ancient Egyptian theology. Fawkes the Phoenix comes to Harry in the chamber due to his statement of faith in Dumbledore, and this ultimately brings Harry the Sword of Gryffindor, which he uses to kill the Basilisk. Ginny as Red Riding Hood is the most obvious way Rowling reflects Grimm's story in her book, but she puts Harry, Ron, and Hermione in this role briefly. Harry and Ron stray from the path that they usually take to school by borrowing the Ford Anglia. Grimm had his heroine racing with a wolf to get to her grandmother's house, and Rowling has them racing with the school train, described as going, quote, along below them like a scarlet snake, unquote, as they fly to school. Ron and Harry co-opt the prerogative of adults, which is to say they grow up too soon, by going to school on their own, and this game, the race with the train, is a battle once they get to school, and their flying car is attacked by a snake-like tree. In this sequence, snake imagery appears again. Quote, Harry looked around just in time to see a branch as thick as a python smash into it. Harry and Ron succumb to temptation, and they pay the price. A game becomes a dangerous battle, and they're lucky to escape relatively unscathed. However, just as he is the benevolent god figure at the end of the book, Dumbledore is in the same role at the beginning, forgiving the boys, who are still learning to discern right from wrong, especially in relation to magic. Harry and Ron partially act out Grimm's tale again when they enter the forest seeking knowledge and encounter the giant spider Aragog, who threatens to eat them. They're saved by a unique hunter-slash-woodsman character, the Ford Anglia, which is now a woods car instead of woods man, living, so to speak, wild in the forest. The wolf who takes in Hermione is the smooth-talking Gilderoy Lockhart. Dumbledore implies that he removes people's memories, having tempted them to brag about their accomplishments, which is presumably how he learned what he needed to write his books. Losing your memories is a virtual death, since we're the sum of our memories and experiences. Like a wolf, Lockhart has rapaciously swallowed these people's pasts whole, and their old lives are effectively over. Hagrid provides the first obstacle to the Philosopher's Stone, Fluffy, who is a Threshold Guardian. And as a Threshold Guardian himself, he's with Harry or is linked to each of the 7 significant thresholds Harry crosses in the first book. Professor Sprout provides the second obstacle to the Philosopher's Stone, Devil's Snare. This book is a fairy tale about a girl lured into a symbolic forest that is also a symbolic hell, and she's lured by a wolf/snake who represents the devil. So it's appropriate that this obstacle is a very snaky sort of vegetation and has devil in its name. As already mentioned, Harry conquers it in the same way that he conquers the Basilisk, through an act of faith, which is a good way to describe relaxing your body to get it to release you. This is instead of a statement of faith in the god figure. It's also conquered through sunlight, which is to say, Fawkes comes to Harry and phoenixes are linked to the sun. Professor Sprout has a further link to this book because she oversees the cultivation of the mandrakes that are needed to brew a potion to revive the petrifaction victims. Like many maidens, which is the book's ruling archetype, Sprout oversees new life, although here we're talking about lives that are renewed. She's also an archetypal mother and crone, all three in one, nurturing plants and cutting the threads of their lives, quite ruthlessly. The mandrakes are presented as very human-like, especially as adolescents, when they, quote, move into each other's pots. It's also interesting that this is yet another reference in this book to the onset of adolescence, even though it's concerning mandrakes, not humans. Without awakening the petrifaction victims, the story cannot have a happy ending, and the teacher who provided the second obstacle to the Philosopher's Stone makes this possible. The fairy tale theme pervading most of this book doesn't mean that Rowling's usual pattern of games segueing into battles is neglected, though Quidditch is a little less prominent than it is in the next book. Magical transportation is treated in this book as a dangerous game repeatedly, such as when Harry is rescued from Privet Drive by Ron, Fred, and George in their father's Flying Ford Anglia. This is again children growing up too soon. They're co-opting adult behavior, and they get in a lot of trouble. In this book, Harry goes to Diagon Alley with the Weasleys, which is the first time he uses Floo, a network of fireplaces regulated by the Ministry of Magic. This isn't children co-opting adult behavior, but it is dangerous and uncertain, a game-like mode of transportation. His unfamiliarity with it leads to his being in a warlike situation, spying on Draco and Lucius Malfoy at the dodgy shop called Borgin and Burke's. Draco is interested in two items in the shop that turn up later: the Hand of Glory, which he uses in the battle at the end of the 6th book, and a cursed necklace that he tries to use to kill Dumbledore, also in the 6th book. Rowling also foreshadows other elements of later books here. A glass case nearby held a withered hand on a cushion, a blood-stained pack of cards, and a staring glass eye. The withered hand is likely the Hand of Glory, but it can also be seen as a reference to Dumbledore's withered hand in Half-Blood Prince. The staring glass eye could also point to Mad-Eye Moody, a character introduced in Goblet of Fire, although the real Mad-Eye doesn't appear until the end of the book. And finally, the blood-stained pack of cards could be tarot cards, which Trelawney repeatedly consults in the 6th book, when she is alarmed by the lightning-struck tower card turning up over and over. Harry's spying on Draco Malfoy in Borgin and Burke's is repeated in the 6th book, and the vanishing cabinet where Harry hides here figures in Draco's plans in that book. Its partner at Hogwarts is the cabinet that Draco works for months to repair, and it is first damaged by Fred and George in this book. Borgin and Burke's is full of what writers call Chekhov's gun, or guns in this case. Almost everything mentioned in the shop is tied in some way to or foreshadows an aspect of the future war. So for Harry, traveling by Floo is another game that turns into a war. After an initial Quidditch reference, the decor in Ron's extremely orange bedroom/shrine to the Chudley Cannons, we don't hear about it again until Oliver Wood wakes Harry for practice, and the Gryffindors learn that the Slytherins had permission to use the pitch at the same time in order to train Draco Malfoy, their new Seeker. They repeatedly confront each other, so it's fitting that Harry and Draco have the same battle rank, Seeker. The members of the Slytherin team, however, have superior weapons, new brooms bought for them by Mr. Malfoy. All 7 of them held out their broomsticks, 7 highly polished brand new handles, and 7 sets of fine gold lettering spelling the words Nimbus 2001 gleamed under the Gryffindors' noses in the early morning sun. It's also appropriate that Ron and Hermione come to the pitch during this confrontation in order to find out what's going on, since both Ron and Hermione engage Draco during this scene, and that should be on the field of war. The Slytherin captain is called Flint. Flinty steel is another way to refer to the sabers that were once used in war. Flint calls Ron and Hermione's advance a pitch invasion, which is another warlike term. Hermione engages Draco with the weapon of truth. No one on Gryffindor bought their way onto the team. Draco has no defense. He lashes out with the word mudblood, a highly offensive and divisive epithet. This causes an instant uproar, equivalent to a declaration of war. The Weasley twins try to jump Draco, but Flint leaps in front of him. Ron points his broken wand at Draco, but his spell backfires. Again, Rowling could have put this anywhere to demonstrate the broken wand that's important later, but instead, this is on the field of metaphorical combat. Rowling uses games and settings for games very deliberately. An unusual sporting club in the 2nd book that doesn't appear again until the 7th is the Headless Hunt, which the Gryffindor ghost, nearly headless Nick, wants to join. In the hunt, ghosts use their severed heads to play head polo and head hockey, among other games, and they also engage in ghostly, warlike cavalry-type charges. However, Nick wasn't properly beheaded, so he's not accepted. Soon after Harry witnesses this militaristic organization, he hears the Basilisk's voice, going from metaphorical war, the Headless Hunt, to real war, and following this is the first casualty, Filch's cat. The Gryffindor versus Slytherin Quidditch match is really Harry against Draco. Harry worries about the superior brooms the Slytherin players have, and Oliver definitely turns it into war, telling Harry to get the snitch first or die trying. Before the match, Harry, Ron, and Hermione discuss Polyjuice Potion for spying in Myrtle's bathroom. And Ron says, it'll be a lot less hassle if you can just knock Malfoy off his broom tomorrow. A game is suggested as a route to success in the war, or as a substitute for another war tactic. Bludgers are indistinguishable from an indisputably war-related object, a cannonball. During this match, a bludger has been tampered with and pursues Harry single-mindedly. He again starts off playing a game and ends up in a life-or-death struggle because the metaphorical war has turned real and he's gone through the looking glass again. Despite the bludger smashing his dominant right arm, he catches the snitch before Draco, achieving completion, reuniting with this part of himself. Dobby visits Harry in the infirmary, and Harry learns that the elf charmed the bludger, so Harry would have to go home, injured. Even though this is friendly fire, and it's an attack Dobby could have staged at any time to send Harry home to relative safety. Remember, he lives with the Dursleys. This occurred in a metaphorical war. It's also due to Harry being injured in this mock war that he's in the hospital wing when Colin Creevy's petrified body is brought in, so that Harry is able to hear Dumbledore say, "The Chamber of Secrets is indeed open again." Fortunately, Colin has been playing the game of running around with his camera, trying to snap pictures of Harry, so he only views the basilisk through the medium of the camera, and therefore a mirror, not looking directly into the basilisk's eyes, which would have been fatal, as it was for Moaning Myrtle. Another metaphorical war in this book is the Dueling Club. The meeting quickly degenerates into real battles, first between Lockhart and Snape, who happen to be the Defense Against the Dark Arts teachers in this book and the 6th book. Then between Harry and Draco. Harry learns something of utmost importance to the war. He learns the disarming charm from the one person he thought never to like or respect, Severus Snape. Remus Lupin, who Harry does like, warns Harry in the 7th book against making this his signature move. But Harry is absolutely right to fight Voldemort with a spell that's designed to disarm, not harm. It's also fitting that the venue in which Harry learns it is the Dueling Club, which is meant to be a mockery of war. With this signature move, Harry is again positioned as an anti-warrior, though he is constantly forced from battle-like games into game-like battles. When Harry and Draco duel, Draco attacks first and makes Harry feel, quote, as though he'd been hit over the head with a saucepan. Harry's counterattack is a tickling charm, producing laughter, which is used to fight boggarts in the next book. Love, laughter, children's games, and fairy tales are all discounted by Voldemort and his followers, but they become weapons against death and despair in Harry's hands. Harry believes, quote, it would be unsporting to bewitch Malfoy while he was on the floor. But Draco fights back with a spell he receives from Snape, who whispers it in his ear. It's not clear that Draco knows what will occur, as Harry doesn't know what the Sectum Sempra spell will do in the 6th book, a spell that he also receives from Snape, or more specifically, from his old potions text. Using the spell from Snape, Draco conjures an enormous snake, though it's presumably smaller and less deadly than a basilisk. Then he finds that Harry can speak to it. Another one of Harry's weapons is revealed during a battle, though again the weapon is non-traditional and unifying, speaking the language of the other. Some students are now frightened of Harry, convinced that he defeated Voldemort as an infant because he was even more evil. They mistake possession of a power for the intent to abuse it. Harry instinctively shares this power by trying to get the snake to back off from Justin Finch-Fletchley, but Harry still emerges from the battle with a frightening reputation after displaying a previously unsuspected weapon. Justin has now been linked to a mock war, and he was nearly a casualty of it. Nearly Headless Nick is also linked to a mock war, the Headless Hunt. They are the next two victims of the Basilisk. Like Colin, who had been on the Quidditch pitch, the field of war, photographing Harry just before the confrontation with the Slytherin team, Justin isn't killed because he sees the Basilisk indirectly, through Nick's ghostly figure. Nick, on the other hand, is already dead, but he's still damaged by this experience. Harry is suspected now more than ever of being the heir of Slytherin, just as he, Ron, and Hermione suspect that Draco Malfoy is the heir. Fred and George Weasley turn this into a joke, as usual, allowing laughter to again do battle against fear. "Oh, get out of the way, Percy," said Fred. "Harry's in a hurry." "Yeah, he's nipping off to the Chamber of Secrets for a cup of tea with his fanged servant," said George, chortling. Harry finds this comforting. Fred and George, at least, thought the idea of his being Slytherin's heir was quite ludicrous. The next warlike activity for Harry, Ron, and Hermione is using Polyjuice Potion to spy on Draco. Hermione finds a hair on her clothes after her dueling club encounter with Millicent Bulstrode degenerates into a wrestling match, not suspecting that it's a cat hair, not Millicent's hair, so using it in the potion doesn't work. Harry and Ron knock out Crabbe and Goyle with cakes, which are a cousin to sweets. The cakes are laced with sleeping potions so that Harry and Ron can get their hair for the Polyjuice Potion. The war again becomes like a game. Harry and Ron must work out how to get into the Slytherin common room and make Draco confess that he's the heir of Slytherin. Draco says he wishes he knew who the real heir was so he could aid and abet him. Ironically, when he's later required to aid and abet the real heir, Voldemort, he has to be coerced, and he only does it to protect his family. Harry finds the diary in Myrtle's bathroom. Myrtle frames the manner in which someone tries to dispose of it as a game. "Here I am, minding my own business, and someone thinks it's funny to throw a book at me." "But it can't hurt you if someone throws something at you," said Harry reasonably. "I mean, it'd just go right through you, wouldn't it?" He had said the wrong thing. Myrtle puffed herself up and shrieked, "Let's all throw books at Myrtle, because she can't feel it. 10 points if you can get it through her stomach. 50 points if it goes through her head. Well, ha ha ha, what a lovely game, I don't think." Another game segues into a battle on Valentine's Day. Lockhart has dwarves dressed as cupids descend on the school to deliver valentines. The one delivering Harry's twangs his harp in a threatening sort of way before tackling and sitting on him, forcing him to listen to a song. This battle that began as a game contributes to the real war when Ginny sees the diary fall out of Harry's bag. Harry writes in the diary and meets Tom Riddle, who is definitely playing a game. He shows Harry a memory to make him believe that Hagrid opened the chamber 50 years earlier, just as Slughorn gives Dumbledore a false memory later, which is designed to absolve him of culpability. Quidditch isn't mentioned often in this book, but just after Harry is at a practice for the last match, he finds his dormitory ransacked and Tom Riddle's diary gone. Ginny knows Harry has the diary because of one game, the Singing Valentine, and that he won't be in his dorm because of another, Quidditch, giving her time to look for the diary. But the last match is cancelled because Penelope Clearwater and Hermione are petrified. With the school entrenched in a real war and on the verge of shutting down, the mock war of Quidditch disappears. When real war is at center stage, fake wars go away, and the real war takes on a game-like quality. Ginny and Harry's descent into the chamber becomes a battle that is the retelling of a fairy tale. Harry and Ron's harrowing excursion in the forest with the giant spiders echoes the same tale. A triumph is again achieved through things that are disregarded and belittled. A small, thin, bespectacled 12-year-old boy voicing his faith in the muggle and sweets-loving headmaster who seems to be gone from Hogwarts, his best friend wielding a malfunctioning wand, and tips torn from the margin of a book by a petrified muggle-born witch. When Harry kills the Basilisk and destroys the diary Horcrux, it is the first step to the defeat of Voldemort, the one who dismisses children and all things connected to childhood. Because of Harry's faith, his belief in what he cannot see, which is something supposedly childish that we grow out of, and because he also believes in the inherent worth in saving a little girl who did not heed her parents' warnings, wholeness and light return to the world, and all is well again. You've been listening to Quantum Harry the Podcast, a podcast version of the book Quantum Harry, A Unified Theory of the Potterverse by B.L. Purdom. All music heard on Quantum Harry is composed and performed by B.L. Purdom. To ask B.L. Purdom to be a guest on your podcast, send a Twitter direct message to @QHPodcast. Next time on Quantum Harry, Episode 15, Prisoner of Quidditch, the first episode examining the role of toys, sweets, and games, especially Quidditch, in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. I hope you'll join me.